There was a time in Canaan when the land still echoed with the memory of giants. Their stories lingered like shadows, tall figures of brutal strength, descendants of ancient beings whose presence had once terrified entire nations. Although most of them had perished during Israel's conquest, a few remnants survived, scattered among the Philistines. Among these remnants grew ISBI-BENOBE, a warrior shaped not only by bloodline but by the silent hatred that burned in the hearts of those who remembered Goliath's fall. ISBI-BENOBE was not famous. No songs honored him and no psalms preserved his name. But among the Philistine warriors his presence commanded fear. His armor gleamed like a warning, and his bronze spear, massive, heavy, forged for killing, was said to require the strength of two ordinary men to wield. To the Philistines he was more than a fighter. He was a symbol of revenge, the possible instrument to avenge the humiliation inflicted decades earlier when a young shepherd boy struck down their champion. In ISBI-BENOBE's heart, the memory of Goliath's death burned like a wound that had never healed. Meanwhile in Israel David had grown old. The boy who had run through Bethlehem's fields, the young warrior who had struck giants and enemies with fearless vigor, had become a king shaped by countless battles, sleepless nights, losses, victories, and fragile moments before God. Age had begun to weigh on his steps. The strength of youth had vanished, replaced by the endurance of a man who carried both crown and scars. Yet David still insisted on going to war with his men. To him leadership was presence. It meant standing where the danger was, not giving orders from afar. When another conflict with the Philistines arose, David put on his armor once more. The battlefield stretched before him, dry earth, dust rising beneath marching feet, the distant clashing of swords. The king walked to the front lines, slower now, his breath shorter than before, but still driven by the heart of a warrior. As battle raged, David fought with determination, but his strength faltered. His arm trembled. Sweat blurred his vision. His breath burned. The weight of years pressed on him like an invisible enemy. It was in that precise moment of weakness that ISBI-BENOBE saw his opportunity. From the middle of the Philistine line, the giant advanced with steady, thunderous steps. Warriors moved aside instinctively. His eyes locked onto David, and in them burned a mission shaped by decades of hatred. For ISBI-BENOBE, this battle was not another chapter in a long war. It was destiny. The young shepherd who had killed Goliath had become an aging king, vulnerable and slow. Now the giant believed it was his task to end the story David had begun. If Goliath had fallen now, he thought Israel's king would fall as well. David did not see him in time. His senses were dulled by exhaustion. His sword felt heavier than ever. He raised it but too slowly. ISBI-BENOBE's shadow grew over him like a storm. The giant lifted his spear, a weapon built for death, and aimed it at the king's heart. The battlefield seemed to hold its breath. For a moment all sound faded. Even the angels, it seemed, paused. David staggered, dropped to his knees, and fought for breath. His body weakened, his strength fading, he faced the bitter truth. He could not defend himself. The king of Israel, the slayer of Goliath, stood on the edge of death, not from an army but from a single forgotten giant. But among the soldiers of Israel was Abishai, son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab. Known for his courage and fierce loyalty, he watched David with the eyes of one who guards something sacred. When he saw the spear raised and the giant preparing the final blow, Abishai ran with a speed born from desperation and devotion. Dust exploded beneath his feet as he crossed the battlefield. With a cry that pierced the roar of war, he threw himself between David and death. His sword struck with precision and fury. ISBI-BENOBE staggered, shock flashing across his face. Before he could recover, Abishai struck again, delivering the blow that ended the threat. The giant fell, his massive body collapsing onto the earth he had hoped to stain with the king's blood. David, still kneeling, lifted his gaze. The two men said nothing. Abishai stood before him, trembling, breathless, his sword dripping with the blood of the enemy. David saw not just a warrior but a friend, one who had preserved the light of Israel. When the battle ended, the soldiers gathered around David with newfound seriousness. They had seen him falter, had felt the terror of possibly losing the king who guided them through countless victories. And there, on the battlefield, they made a decision that would shape Israel's future. They swore that David would never again go out to war. One of them spoke with solemn conviction, "You shall not extinguish the lamp of Israel." The words carried weight far beyond the moment. David was not only their king. He was the God-appointed light that guided the people. That light could not be risked again. David did not argue. He knew. He understood that his strength now belonged to wisdom, not war. The time had come to lead through counsel, not combat. Although David no longer fought on the front lines, the war continued. Other giants appeared, descendants of ancient warriors who still bore hatred against Israel. But now the men David had trained rose to the challenge. Sibai, Elhanan, Jonathan, names less known but mighty in faith, defeated these giants one by one. With each victory they broke the power of ancient fear. Israel learned that its strength came not from one hero, but from God who empowered many. ISBI-BENOBE's death brought no songs, no celebration, no monuments. Yet his brief encounter with David changed the nation. Through him, Israel recognized that even the greatest leaders grow weary. Even the strongest need to be guarded. The giant's attack became a turning point, revealing the loyalty of David's men and inaugurating a new phase where the king's wisdom mattered more than his sword. David, humbled and awakened, began to prepare future leaders. He valued the men around him with deeper gratitude. He understood that leadership meant knowing when to fight and when to step back, trust others, and preserve the legacy God had entrusted to him. ISBI-BENOBE, though forgotten in most stories, served as a silent reminder that vulnerability is not defeat. That true greatness is not the absence of weakness but the courage to accept help. That loyalty can save a life. And that God teaches through moments that seem small, moments that change everything. Thus, the forgotten giant became a chapter of remembrance. A scar on Israel's history, discreet but profound. A warning, a shift, a lesson. For through his rise and fall, Israel learned that even kings need protectors, and that the bonds of loyalty and humility can shape the destiny of a nation.